Daniel Jones, as we were just talking about, got signed to a 4-year, $160 million contract, which gets him 40 a year. Jerm, what the hell are the Giants doing? Which you told us earlier, but I still want to know.
Yeah.
Tell me again.
They're playing it safe. They're locking up a player they believe in.
It could have been worse.
And it could have been worse because
right. You say pick
you're risking either overpaying for Jimmy Garoppolo, who may or may not want to go to the Giants anyway, and then you're stuck with a Tyrod Taylor. So the options aren't really great for you. You lock in a quarterback who obviously you've had success with your new coach. The new coach believes, the GM believes, they think that they can win with Danny Dimes.
Yeah.
He's shown a lot of promise. Even when they had Ben McAdoo out there, they weren't taking advantage of his athleticism. I remember that 80-yard run he busted out of nowhere. I said, hey, why don't they do more of that? On? Yeah, right. I never said he wasn't clumsy. I'm just saying he was athletic. They aren't mutually exclusive.
Like, that was the one, right? I think it was against when the football team. I think that was their first or second year as a football team.
So they were doing what any smart organization would do. Not only did they lock up a quarterback that they've already had success with in terms of, if you want to look at this small sample size, but something to look forward to. It wasn't a disaster.
His rookie year wasn't garbage either. I was looking back at his rookie year numbers. They're not trash for a rookie.
Right.
Like, picked as high as he was. Who the hell is he? New York Giants. Wasn't bad.
The problem is they do this comparison analysis on what they think a person is worth. Again, we said it earlier. You're worth what somebody's willing to pay you. You need to separate artists from art. You got to stop looking at people's salaries. The Giants, the contract is team friendly because they can come up off it in 3 years before the real money hits. He's only going to make $9 million this next year and $25 or $30 million the years after. It's that fifth year. That's where that $46.5 million comes in. They can be off that before that even hits. So it honestly, shout out to GM Joe Shine, because that helps the Giants. Them picking up his fifth-year option was the smartest thing they could do, because then they would have to pay him even more if they didn't. If they would have just extended him when they did, or before that fifth-year option, they would end up having to pay him more or risk losing out on him altogether. So the Giants were thinking, you know what? We are comfortable. Comfortable and confident are two separate things. We are comfortable with Daniel Jones. We think that if we can add a DeAndre Hopkins, or add a receiver in the draft, or add another receiver, an Adam Thielen or an OBJ or whatever, whoever, with Saquon Barkley and some of our defensive talent, I think we could put a contender on the field. So I think that's what the Giants were thinking. Sometimes the grass isn't greener on the other side. Sometimes it's greener, but most times it's not. So, it's better with the devil you know rather than the devil you don't, I think, was their line of thinking there.
Yeah. As much as I hate to admit it, that was pretty accurate. I mean, you pay the quarterback. It's the most important position. Like, they're really hard to come by. We see the haul that was just pumped up to the number one pick. Clearly that screams quarterback with as much as you're giving up. So we know how much that position is valued. It's just the amount for me, and to me, and people might kind of freak on this, but it looks desperate paying him this much. But I also have to take into context as well that the market is going to reset. And I've seen, the Giants and some of the Giants fans like finding any possible small way to compare Daniel Jones to Eli Manning because of how he was doubted, because of how he was in the small school. Why was he drafted here type of thing. But I really don't understand it, because in a way, I feel like maybe you could blame the Saints or blame some of these other quarterback contracts that have happened, when they signed Derek Carr, when Aaron Rodgers got his money, when Deshaun Watson got his money. And the bad contracts are just kind of rippling into this, right? I will say, though, Danny Dimes was accurate this year. And, 700 yards and 7 touchdowns. I know that's like a big line that people are dropping about Daniel Jones. He still had 3,900 yards and 22 touchdowns, which is a respectable stat line, I feel like, for a guy like Daniel Jones, but it doesn't warrant $40 million, especially when you just ripped off Saquon Barkley so disrespectfully. This whole quarterback market, though, is about to clearly get reset, and I feel like freaking out about prices is maybe kind of just a waste of our time at this point, because we know that these dudes are just, they're going to be getting a haul, right? And they're going to happen, and then they're going to get restructured, and then they're going to happen, and then they're going to move back, so it's going to be a lot to see in the NFL as things unfold. Real quick though, Germ, what are your expectations? Like, give me a rough stat line, maybe a win total, small playoff depth on, the Giants and Daniel Jones this year. Now that he's got such a handsome payday,
So I'm going to pull up his stats from last year. 67% completion, 3,200
that's
yards,
really good,
throwing to Isaiah Hodgins and
right?
Wandell Robinson. Okay, just for some context, 15
Right.
touchdowns. They were 9-6-1. I mean, to set the 10 and if they were 10-6 and won the division, or nobody would be saying anything. What are you hung up on? Are you hung up on the 15? If you're a Daniel Jones hater, you hung up on 15 touchdowns. Okay, well, look who he had to throw to. Who's his tight end? Who's his number one receiver? Would his number one receiver be a starting receiver on any other team, or be a number one receiver on any other team in the NFL, or a number two receiver? Is Darius Slayton doing it for you? You know what I mean?
Appreciate that,
So
Michael Powers.
yeah, man. Isaiah Hodgins was a Buffalo Bill. He was a fifth stringer. He was the Giants, and that's why he ended up and we had to cut him. That's how he ended up with the Giants. He's their number two receiver. So I mean, give Daniel Jones a break.
Yeah,
If they can get him a number one receiver, if they can, I don't care if it's paper knees OBJ or somehow it's DeAndre Hopkins. Daniel Jones could be a 4,000-yard passer. Sure. 3,200 yards ain't nothing to sneeze at. Again, 9-6-1, the freak, tie game. Easily could have been 10-6 or
yeah,
9-7, whatever. But 10-6, I don't think people would be sneezing at that very often or very much.
mm,
So,
mm.
um, I think Daniel Jones. I'm going to give them. I'll give the Giants 10 wins next year. I think they'll be very
Damn,
competitive in the NFC East. I think they'll be the number 2 team. I think the Eagles are still clearly a better squad. But I do think the Giants will also make the playoffs again. They'll probably be the number 1 wild card team. And I do think Daniel Jones, if they get a number 1 receiver, whether that's in the draft or through free agency or a trade or whatever,
yeah.
I do think Daniel Jones will get 4,000 yards, 100%.
That's what I'm right behind as well. I would say, I'd like to see at least 4,000 yards, 25 passing touchdowns. And me, man, I only see 7 to 8 wins on their schedule. I don't have the schedule
Mhm.
right in front of me, but I looked at it before, we got
Yeah.
into the show. I was taking notes and everything. And I'm just like, the way the NFL's unfolding, man, I only, as of today, pre-draft, pre-free agency, March 10th, 2023, 8:05 p.m. Eastern time. As of that time, I only see the Giants winning 7 or 8 games. They could bring in guys like
Yeah.
you said, DeAndre Hopkins, Jalen Ramsey's on the market, Eric Kendricks just got cut from the Vikings. Like, there's a lot of dudes going around the league right now. But like I said, I'd like to see about 4,000 yards, 25 passing touchdowns. I only see 7 to 8 wins, but if he does better than that, if he gets at least the stat line, I'm happy about it. It's not that I'm a Giants fan. We're just clearly
Right.
debating it
Yeah.
here. But
Well, what is it
if
about
he
the
does,
what, you're distinguishing passing touchdowns from other, like Josh Allen has a lot of rushing touchdowns. That doesn't make him any less of a quarterback. Daniel
right.
Jones had 22 total touchdowns on the season with
Yep.
only 5 interceptions.
Right.
Everybody keeps talking about how many
That
touchdowns
is
he threw or
impressive.
didn't
I will
throw.
say those 5 picks is very, very impressive. I know it's only
So
15 touchdowns, 3,200 yards, but you can't
right,
argue with 5 picks. So some people would be
right.
like, oh, well, he only put the ball in the air this many times. Well,
But so what? 22 total touchdowns is right on par with your 25 pass. Like you're that's his game, right?
yeah,
Same with Josh Allen. He's a rushing quarterback. He can, in that red zone, to have a quarterback that can draw and score is just as valuable as a passing touchdown. So
yeah,
I don't like when people distinguish, well, it has to be a passing touchdown. Well, no, it
right,
doesn't.
right,
He has those rushing touchdowns because he was passing it up until the red zone, where they could now call a play where he was able to run the ball, and he's able to
right,
run the ball. Why take
right.
that away from him, or why penalize him because he has that ability? Um, I expect the touchdown total to be more, and I do expect the passing touchdowns to be more
Heard that.
if they get him a better receiver. That 15 could easily be 20, I think.
Right. Yeah, no, I already know. However, I clip this and put it out, folks can roast me because you're like, man, he just put up 3,900 yards and 22. That's not far off. You're right. I am being picky. I do have to understand that, like, a lot of guys I like Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow,
Mhm.
hopefully Kyler gets his head on right. Like, those guys move around a lot, put a lot of numbers, Lamar Jackson as well, put numbers on the ground, rushing touchdowns. It's still 6 points. It's still going to help your team out at the end of the day.